Okay, but I'm going to start with a story first. And don't worry, it's not an embarrassing story about you.
Good thing.
You never know.
It's okay.
So, hi everyone, I'm Dr. Cynthia Clark. I'm an acupuncture physician. I'm a Chinese medicine herbologist, and I'm a practitioner here at Longevity Wellness. And this is Dr. Ernesto Hernandez, who has a long, long list of credentials that he will happily pepper through his presentation, so you'll get to hear more and more. But my favorite one of the things he does that I just love bragging about is the Alzheimer's reversal protocol. And one of the key components of the Alzheimer's reversal protocol is the ketogenic diet. He's going to talk more about all that. I'm going to tell the story that you don't know about how I stumbled upon this, which was that several years ago, this is actually my story of how I met Grandmaster David. Several years ago, I dislocated my knee, and it blew up like this, and I was living on the second story apartment, and I had two clinics. I had one in Tampa and one in Sarasota. And so I was going up and down the stairs, and I was schlepping boxes of standard process back and forth with me to each one. And I was also training for triathlon at the time. Long story short, it was not in my schedule to have a dislocated knee and to not be able to walk. It would be severely limiting, not just to my triathlon training, which I confess was foremost on my brain, but also on my livelihood, my ability to earn a living. So I went to this Qigong master that I'd heard some cool stuff about. Most of you know my story about that, which was that I walked in on crutches, and 2 hours later I walked out without, and 2 weeks later I was running, so like that was pretty awesome. I said I have to go study with that guy right away. And one of the things that was discovered during that process was that I had an infection under my kneecap. This is why my knee had dislocated in the first place. It was a bit of candida that was pushing my kneecap out.
Kidding?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
On your knee?
Yep, so that's what happens when your microbiome, he'll probably talk about that stuff. When your microbiome gets compromised, and then you wind up with stuff where it's not supposed to be. You're supposed to have candida in your body, but this was where it wasn't supposed to be. So, obviously, as my livelihood and both my hobby depended upon the structure of my knee, I immediately started on the candida diet after this. After my knee got put back, I'm like, oh, I'm keeping this. So I started on the candida diet, and the candida diet is a super no sugar diet, like not even the sugar that's in like a dry rub for a brisket or something, like not even that, right? Definitely not anything that's in condiments. It's just crazy like this. And during this time, so I can't work out because I got the knee thing that's still healing. I can walk, but I can't really work out during this time. And I really have this sense that this is not a short-term thing for me, that this is something I'm gonna have to be dedicated to. And so I knew that this had to be sustainable. Ladies, we can eat any possible way for somewhere between 2 days and 2 weeks, right? Gentlemen, I know you guys have a lot of willpower, but like I'm just saying, there's a lot of pressure in our world on how us ladies look, and you would not believe the things that ladies do that are painful or uncomfortable or taste horrible in order to present the way that we want to present. So I could do that, but I knew it needed to be more sustainable. And so what I did is I accidentally did keto. I did absolutely no sugar, and then I did high fat. During this time I was having 3,000 calories a day. Sounds fantastic, right? Guess what? I lost weight. I lost all of those last few pounds. I mean, I wasn't heavy to begin with, but I lost those last few pounds that were the hardest to lose. I felt fantastic, and I healed really fast with my knee. With that, I'm going to turn it over to the keto expert, Dr. Ernesto Hernandez, who has followed this diet. I can attest, I'm gonna out you as being 100% compliant with the keto diet pretty much all of the time. So he's going to talk to you not only about the science about this, but he's really talking to you about the sustainability of it. It's not just here's a thing you might do for a couple weeks. He's going to talk to you about the reality of it. So thank you.
Well, thank you.
Yay.
Thank you.
Everyone has time?
Yeah.
Okay, everybody's had time?
Yes.
Okay, yay. I've done this before, absolutely.
So welcome, for coming to our presentation tonight. And I mentioned some of you are here for different reasons as to why you're interested in keto. I know in our culture, in the past couple of years, it's gotten really popular for people who use keto for losing weight. And is that one of the reasons why you're here, to learn how to manage weight? Okay. Another reason that keto is popular is for helping people have more energy. And third is to reduce inflammation in their body. And fourth is to feel smarter. Because, it helps with making your brain function better. And I'll explain how that works. And is there another reason I haven't mentioned as to why you're interested in keto?
To withdraw from sugar.
Withdrawal from sugar. So tell me more what you mean by that.
Well, I've always been addicted to sugar, and sugar can control your life. And, I know that it's for my metabolism, heavy sugar and carbohydrate intake is detrimental to my health.
Okay, very good. So, we'll talk a little bit about that. So, definition of keto, ketogenic diet. And I'm going to compare and contrast that to how we normally eat. Okay, so you guys have heard of Priuses or seen Prius, Toyota hybrid cars. Well, our bodies are kind of like a Prius in a way. A Prius can burn electricity or not use electricity to operate and can burn fuel. Okay, and when it burns gas, what happens?
It puts out a lot of bad stuff, a lot of
Carbon emissions, right? And there's smoke, there's debris, and when it's operating on the electric mode, what's it like? It's a very clean burn, right? So our bodies operate pretty much the same way. When we eat carbs, it's a good source of energy, but there's always a waste product that the body has to deal with. Okay, and when you burn fats, it's a very clean burn. So to give you a great visual is if you burn a piece of paper, it gives off smoke and there's ash. You got to deal with the ash, and that's the inflammatory aspect of having a high carb diet. But if you burn a candle, the candle has a little bit of smoke, but if it's a pure fat candle, not a synthetic chemical candle, that thing will burn for hours and hours and days. And if you did the same volume of paper to the candle, guess what? If you want to keep a fire going, you add more paper. And before you know it, you burn through reams of paper while that candle is still burning. That's what happens inside our bodies. When we the contrast of burning carbs to burning fats. So we are designed with this hybrid system that we can go back and forth. But what happens in our culture is we seldom, naturally, because of our popular diet, the American diet, our fat intake is a lot less than was optimal for the average person. So we never really get to test out the part of our metabolism that burns fat very efficiently. And that's what the ketogenic diet is, to help a person convert from being a exclusive carbohydrate burner, sugar burner, to being a more effective fat burner. And then what happens is, how then be able to switch, have the adaptability to switch back and forth when needs be. Because the key for optimal health is adaptability. Not just physical health, but for mental health. That if this isn't going this way, I can change this way. You just kind of adapt. And what happens for some of us, and I'm glad you mentioned about sugar kind of running you, because most of my life, I was a major carboholic. And I had all the health problems as a kid related to eating lots of carbs. I grew up north in New Jersey in a community that was like 70% Cuban, and had the best Cuban bakeries. So my parents would send me to the bakery to buy 2 or 3 loaves of Cuban bread. By the time I get home, I ate one of them. And these things were like yay long, but that fresh smell of baked bread, so I had all sorts of digestive issues and allergies and really didn't figure out why until I was an adult. So a lot of people are trying out this ketogenic diet without really fully understanding some of the science behind it. So we talked about 2 macronutrients right so far. One is carbohydrates and sugars, and then we talked about fats. There's a third macronutrient. Who knows what that is?
Protein.
Protein. Exactly.
Wow, good
Very good.
class.
So this is a process of manipulating these 3 macronutrients in our bodies. And for each person, this can be a little different. Protein, we have carbs, and we have fats. And what a lot of people try to do when they first try out a ketogenic diet is, okay, they're gonna cut out all the carbs, they're gonna eat a lot of protein, eat a lot of fats, not a whole lot of vegetables. And for some people, guess what the result of that is?
Constipation.
Constipation.
Weight gain.
The big C.
Well, no, not necessarily weight gain, no, they can lose weight.
Would your
Oh, okay.
cholesterol go up?
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
Nervous
It's a-
system
It's a myth. I'm glad you bring that up. A lot of people believe if you eat more fat, that your cholesterol is going to go up. That's been invalidated by science. That was actually some junk science that came out many decades ago that had no validity, but everybody bought into it. And the whole food pyramid got designed around really faulty science. So where was I?
What
What
happens
happens
to
if
them
you drink- you
when they
change
don't
your
eat vegetables?
Okay, very good, thank you.
They don't go into ketosis?
Nervous system?
Well, what besides
Energy.
you know, having issues with some constipation, their physiology gets really out of whack. What happens, the body now, when you cut out the carbs, the body goes into this detox mode. Okay, those inflammation that you have in your tissues say, I'm getting out of here. Okay, and on the one hand, that can be good, but if you have a history of a lot of toxins that have accumulated in your body, particularly fat-soluble toxins, we took Dr. Cynthia and I took a seminar recently up in North Carolina with some of these great biomedical researchers. And one of the things they put out was there was like over 80,000 chemicals are registered in the United States. And a good majority of those chemicals are fat-soluble chemicals that when they get into your body, they're going to store in your fat. So if you go through a process to do rapid weight loss, guess what happens with these toxins in your tissues? They come out into your bloodstream. And if you haven't prepared your body for that, now you have these toxins which were encapsulated in your fat tissue, and that kind of protects you. But now, when you reduce fat quickly, this is coming out into your bloodstream and it's circulating, and now it can be really damaging to your internal organs. If you don't have enough of the nutrient reserves in your body to help bind those toxins, convert them from a fat-soluble to water-soluble, so your body, you can excrete them through your urine, through your breath, through your feces. But what happens is, if you leave a lot of vegetables out of your diet to go ketogenic, which was like the really early, what's the guy that made Atkins, thank you, fellow, you know, it didn't emphasize vegetables very much in the beginning. And what some of these people were experiencing was called a ketogenic flu. It's a term where you just feel lousy. It could be a couple days, it could be, for some people, a couple months, depending on how toxic they were to begin with, because they didn't have adequate phytonutrients in their body to counteract those toxins, to prepare the body for all that release. So it's really having an optimal ratio of proteins, carbs, and fats. It's not complete carb elimination. It's identifying for your particular body how many grams of carbs can you tolerate.
Did you just say that all keto is not the same for your particular body?
That's
Right,
correct.
that's a thing, cause that is not common knowledge.
Well, it's not all keto, it's the macros. Macros for each person are different.
The macros for each person is different.
Yeah.
But the macros, in order to achieve a ketogenic state, so what does that mean exactly? Ketogenic state. It means that your body is converting fat to ketones. And ketones is the fuel your body will use instead of your body breaking down a carbohydrate to a sugar. And your body then uses that to burn. Okay? So when I first tried or explored the ketogenic diet, I had to be under 60 grams of carbohydrates in a day in order to be able to have measurable ketones in my body. And that's not a whole lot. But I experimented, I brought it down to 30 grams of carbohydrates in a day, which basically that means it's only green vegetables. And there's certain ones like Brussels sprouts, although it's a green vegetable, it's higher in carbs. So you have to then look at which vegetables, what's the ratios of carbs in those vegetables. Just because it's green doesn't mean there aren't any carbs in it. Okay? So you start playing around with this, and I found that I was really in that my optimal was somewhere between 30 and 60 grams. But that's not a whole lot of carbs. And then the next part of it is how much fat do I have to ingest to produce adequate ketones. So you play with it, okay? So I started eating the grass-fed fatty steaks, but I was eating too much protein. Because if you eat too much protein, guess what happens? The protein will convert to sugar. If it's more protein than your body can handle, now even though you that blew your mind?
Blew my mind, Dr. Ernesto.
Yeah, so I thought, man, what's wrong? Because your body can only use so much protein, and the rest is gonna excrete it, and the metabolic process, if your body is needing fuel, it will break it down into sugar. In fact, if you are in a starvation mode, and you don't have enough food, your body will break down your own muscles to make fuel. So it's the same process. Okay, so I realized, I had to cut back. I couldn't be eating a 16-ounce steak with, I had to break it down and cut it back and cut it back. And then it's like, okay, about 4 ounces was max I could have at a time. 4 ounces of protein. Somewhere between 30 and 60 grams of carbohydrates. Now we had to figure out the fat component. And I mean, initially.
Did you do 4 ounces of protein 3 times a day or 5 times a day?
4 ounces. 3 times a day.
3 times a day.
And right now I can't think of what that translates into grams of protein. Okay, because having 4 ounces of bison, that's not 4 ounces of protein.
Right.
Okay, each whether it's chicken or fish or bison, you have to look. You have these things called macronutrient charts, which tells you like for every ounce of a particular food, it tells you this has so many grams of protein, this has so many grams of carbs, so many grams of fat, and you can find these things online. So you play around with it, and so I wasn't working with another professional. I'm thinking, I'm a doctor, I should be able to figure this out. Well, it took me probably over 6 months of trial and error to find that sweet spot. In my body, I felt, wow, I feel sharper, I have more energy, and cravings for carbs are gone. And my body felt good. That's a lot of trial and error. And I went through a lot of periods of not feeling too good. But I kept reading the books, and the books would tell, some part of the story, but not the whole part of the story. You get a different book, it tells some part of the story about the other part of the story, and you're kind of going through and figuring this out. But the key is, I had to eat so much fat. I was really surprised how much fat I had to eat to consume. Not just the fat that was on the meats, not just eating avocado and guacamole. I had to add, not just cooking with coconut oil, but I add additional coconut oil to my food and add avocado oil, macadamia oil. Then I had to eat nuts, fine fatty nuts, pine nuts, macadamia nuts, almonds, walnuts. It's a lot of fat.
How much?
How much is it?
I wish I had an actual number to tell you, but currently, what I can tell you what I do, just give you a visual. Costco sells this guacamole. There's like 3 pounds of it in 4 little containers. I eat like 1.5 of the little containers a day of guacamole to have fat from avocado. I put about 2 tablespoons of coconut oil in each of my meals.
Fish oil.
I have about 6 tablespoons of fish oil, cod liver oil a day. And now I'm going to preface this, my metabolism is very high. This is not what's going to necessarily be for you, okay? I have pine nuts. I have 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 8 handfuls of pine nuts in a day.
Holy crap.
That's a lot.
Okay. And so I found, luckily, Trader Joe's sells these little individual packets of coconut oil. That when I go out to eat, I'm like ripping these things out and squeezing them on my food. Because once you become keto adaptive and you feel good on a certain level of fats, when you go a day or 2 without it, you feel like, I just lost a superpower. Something like really like downshifted. It's like, I feel dumb. Or dumber. And because the research really shows that since our brains are predominantly fat, water, and protein, and our diets have changed so much in the past 60 years that when they came out with fat is bad and everybody's eating more carbohydrates, we have developed a whole myriad of neurological diseases that have become epidemic because of that change of the diet and the culture. And they found that when someone is diagnosed with Alzheimer's, dementia, even with Parkinson's, if they switch them over to a ketogenic diet, now their nervous system upregulates and it's like they gain a 15-30% improvement just by doing that.
Wow.
Also with anxiety and ADHD also.
Yeah, any condition, virtually any condition that has a neurological component, you'll get improvement. So it's one of the key protocols. What else I want to say about that before I move on to the next part?
Does all that fat make your skin moist?
Great question. There is a point that you can have too much. And I experienced that I would, this is kind of gross, but I would experiment with, what happens if I had 4 tablespoons of coconut oil in my food? Well, I start feeling it coming out of my pores.
Greasy face.
It's like, okay, I did a little too much of that particular fat at least. And so I also learned that I had to work on my liver and gallbladder. I had to improve the function of it because I had to produce enough bile in a natural way to help break down all that fat. Because otherwise I was feeling heavy. Like I felt good on one hand, but I felt like something wasn't right in the other. So I had to really work on strengthening my liver and getting that working better. So there's some products I take to facilitate, it's made from beets. You can just eat more beets.
A lot more beets.
A lot more beets,
More
right?
than my tummy will hold.
Yeah.
And the thing is that there's a limit. If you're gonna be ketogenic, there's a lot of carbs and sugars in beets. So if you have a desiccated beet where you just have the primary nutrients without the carbohydrates and the sugars, your liver loves that. It goes straight, produce, help with bile, production.
Did you already have a propensity to have a slow functioning liver?
Mm.
So you just felt that it was due to the increase in fat intake?
And now, I have a very high metabolism, so my need is to be very different from someone else's. Someone else, I have a family history of diabetics on both sides. And my dad's side is really bad, more so than my mom's. So I knew that I needed to find a way to not go down that road. Okay, and even I had hypoglycemia for many years and had all sorts of blood sugar regulation issues. And when I started doing this, I was even. I could even miss a day of food, and I would be even. Try and miss a day of food when you're on a carbohydrate diet. You get the crankies, you get irritable, all sorts of things, go awry. Okay, but it's like that candle, that steady burn. So you asked me earlier about calories. The beautiful thing I find with a ketogenic diet, that for the most part you can forget about that whole concept of calories. Because your metabolism, if you're doing the system properly, your metabolism regulates that you will feel satiated, because eating fats is a more satiating nutrient. So you're less likely to really overeat unless there's some imbalances with your thyroid and other things like that. That you're less likely to overeat. And if you happen to eat a lot more calories, you optimize your body to being a fat burner. So just your body, if you have excess fat in your tissues, guess what's going to happen when you sleep? Your body's going to burn the fat because it is a fat burner. That's the beauty of the whole process. So when I first did this, I lost weight I didn't need to lose. And I didn't do it in a healthy way. I wasn't getting enough green vegetables in me. And I reduced my carbs. So, at one point, when I was done at that 30 grams of carbs, it was too low for me. When I bumped it up closer, 40-ish, 50, around there, I still was able to maintain a more normal weight. And you have to kind of listen, your body will tell you if you pay attention. But I wish I had worked with someone who kind of paved the way. So I didn't have to take so long and having to deal with the keto flu and all these other things that I think I created probably some, what's the word I'm looking for?
Issues.
Yeah, that's a different word. With some of the toxins that release, because I grew up in New Jersey. My dad was a contractor, and he would take me with him to after school and the weekends and during the summers to work at these job sites. So I was exposed to a lot of lead, a lot of soldering. Lead was used back then. There was he taught me how to. Back then it was all manual when you had when you install new piping underground to create those threads. And you have all that heavy metal exposure. So I had a lot of heavy metal stuff. And when this stuff started coming out of me, I know that I probably created some problems, for myself. And
had you ever gone through any detox processes before this?
I had some before then, and I've had many since then.
Yeah.
To really open up my pathways as much as possible. Because that's really the smartest way to do it, is build up nutrient reserves, work on opening up the detox pathways that are working well, and you baby step into the ketogenic model, and then that's like the best of all worlds. Your body will have an easier transition, you'll be more adaptive, and it'll be more fun, versus having to go with the kind of side effects. Did you raise your hand?
No, it's distraction.
Okay. And so how do you work this out? Is you want to find what's called a keto macronutrient calculator online. And then you punch in your gender, your age, and whether or not you want to gain weight, maintain weight, or lose weight. And then you put in, for example, amount of protein you want to eat in a day, and then it kind of fills in the rest. Or if you want to put in the more carbs you want to limit yourself to, it auto-populates the rest. That didn't exist back when I was doing this. You had to do the math by hand, and I wasn't that great at math. So it was a lot of, let's see what, throw something and see what sticks. And I find that I actually spend less money on food eating this way. Before, I used to eat all day long. All day long. Always, now I eat 3 times a day. That's it. And I seldom feel the need to snack. And with ketogenic diets, there's a concept called intermittent fasting. That if you really want to bring your ketones up and really help your body burn more fat, you pick a range of like 14 to 16 hours where you don't eat. So say your last meal, you finish eating at 6 o'clock in the evening, you don't eat till 10 or 12 the next day. That's intermittent fasting. And for some people, they can easily transition into that. Some people, it's not appropriate to start there because the metabolism needs a lot of support and help before it can do that. But with a ketogenic diet, it's easier to do that than to try to do intermittent fasting when you're eating a lot of carbs, because you will just be hungry. And one of the challenges people have with weight loss or weight reduction programs is the hunger factor. That you want to reduce the weight, but you feel hungry, so you feel this, it calls your name. Whether it's the candy, the chocolate, and things of that nature. And before you know it, your will breaks. When you're tired, grumpy, haven't slept well, stressed, you're gonna like suddenly before you know it, you're across the room and it's in your mouth and you don't even know how you got there. Okay? And when you're mostly on a carbohydrate diet for fuel, that you're very high risk for that. When you start converting over to a ketogenic diet, those cravings disappear for the most part. Sometimes they may stick, and those little adjustments that can be made with the person within a relatively short period of time, you can get free of that. So you're actually running the ship versus the cravings running you. So any questions on what I just went over? I want to give an overview. I didn't get too deep in the science. Yes, Franny?
Can you do a vegetarian keto?
There is a way to do it, but it takes a lot more discipline and work to try and get all the fats in. And typically you have to do a lot more dairy to make that happen. And I'm not a big proponent of dairy. For some people, they seem to tolerate it well, but a lot of people don't. So often the vegetarian way, you have to do a little more dairy.
I'm gonna stay up here for this part, because I wanted to talk about one of the problems that is endemic to Florida. We have some particular environmental issues that happen here that people in other parts of the country don't have as much of. So people in arid climates don't have this, but people in Florida, because we have these hurricanes and because we have these coastal regions, we have a particular pathogen that we're exposed to a lot, and I'm leading you on because I want to see if anybody knows what it is, if anybody can guess what it is. Yes. Yep, that's exactly it. So, I started by telling you this story about having this candida infection underneath the patella in my knee. And what is candida?
Overgrowth of sugar.
It's a fungus.
Yeah, it's a fungus. And what's the difference between a fungus and mold? Well, basically, there's the same family. The difference between yeast and fungus is that yeast is in your body. The difference between it is that yeast is flowing through. It's in your bloodstream. It's circulating. Fungus grows tentacles and it grabs on, and that's what had happened in my knee, right? So it had lodged and it had taken root. So I had this situation where I had this candida, I had this fungus in my body. Why would my accidentally stumbling upon a ketogenic diet, because this was back a little ways, keto was like known about, but it wasn't really, why would that help with a mold, with a candida infection in my body?
You're eliminating sugar.
I'm eliminating sugar, excellent. Why does that help?
Sugar.
Does it
What-
feed
what it's
it?
all
Sugar
about.
feeds yeast, if you're all
Yep.
brewers. You know, yes, exactly. Sugar feeds yeast, and there's a specific thing that happens when we get exposed to mold, which is that we have these microtoxins that build up inside of our body. So one of the things that we have to do is we have to change our diet in a way so that we're not constantly feeding it. That thing that Dr. Ernesto said about you're just walking along and then you got a cookie in your mouth, that's exactly what happened to me. I was doing this candida diet and I was 100% dedicated. There was no temptation at all. And I was staying at my girlfriend's house and she had this pile of cookies and I'm walking past this table and there's one here before I even know that I picked it up. That was not, there was no willpower. There was no like devil on one shoulder and angel on the other argument going on. That was just straight up the candida in my body that was dying off was sending out a mayday so that they wouldn't get killed off. I had a pathogen in my body that was voting for what I ate stronger than I was, which is kind of freaky when you think about it. It's spooky, right? Like,
Powerful.
it's powerful.
And so same thing happens with parasites and other pathogens that, you know, they affect our cognition, they affect our behavior more than that credit is given to them.
This is one of our, in case you wonder what we talk about in our dates, there's a fantastic book called Your Brain on Parasites, and one of the stories that they talk about is an ant. When it gets infected with a particular type of parasite, what it does is every single night, all of the other little ants go back to their little mound and have their little antly time together, and this one, the guys that are infected with this parasite, instead they'll break off and they'll go up and they will climb onto the tallest piece of grass. And they will stay there all night, and then the next day they will join their little ant friends as they go back and they go out back their day. And then the next night they'll do the same thing, and they'll do this every single night until, any guesses?
They die.
They get eaten.
A sheep eats them. And the reason for that is because this particular parasite completes its life cycle in the gallbladder of the sheep. Talk about not getting a vote. And by the way, if you think that we're immune to things that affect ants just because we're bigger, I was right here. It is absolutely, the microbiome of your body is voting. You remember the DNA project that we had where we charted every single genome in the entire human species, and at the end of it, when we got to the end of that project, what did we find out? Anybody? Yeah, well, that's kind of actually the answer. We found out that it really doesn't matter